Hi, this is Chrissy Incognito, and welcome to another episode of my channel. Now, you might be wondering why I'm incognito. This is my alter ego that can say things that I could not otherwise say unless I was incognito. So, thank you for returning. This is episode 3 entitled Michael 5. In order to understand more about this video, please view the previous video entitled Michael 4. Happy listening. I knew my responsibility. I knew what I had to do at that time. So I didn't drink as in like every so often me and my friends would do whatever, but I did not drink. Now I was about this point I was about 90 pounds. Naturally, like I wasn't, I didn't have an eating disorder. But every time I had a stressful event in life, I usually just stopped eating out of decompensation, which means you're just breaking down. Basically, you're dying mentally because you can't even sustain yourself enough to eat. But anyway, so I'm not a drinker. I'm about 90 pounds at the time. So I go and I get whiskey because it's open, it's in the liquor cabinet. And my parents didn't have to lock up the liquor cabinet because none of us touched it, you know? Um, I went to the liquor cabinet and I said to myself, I need to um like make myself bleed so I bleed out and die because I wouldn't have had enough guts to stab a knife in me. There were no guns around me. Um Poison, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. So I get drunk at this point and I took so my parents, again, you have to remember this is 1990. So it was a while ago. My parents had loose blades for shaving for their razors. So there's loose blades and then there's the safety razors. They had both, but they had loose blades. So I took it and I gouged it into my arm. It was so painful. But I figured a good sticking gouge and dragging it down would cause enough bleed out. Now, that's not a way to go. I mean, it's not a, it's, if you, I'm just telling you what was going through my mind at the time. And then it really hurt. And I got a towel. It was all over the towel. And then I started doing a lot of other cuts. I guess in my mind, I felt if one big cut was not gonna do it, then maybe I could do a bunch of medium cuts that together it would be the whole thing. I I've maybe told 5 people this story in my entire life. But anyway, I think it's worth um reflecting on. Okay, so now I'm like I'm bleeding, I'm drunk. I'm like all I want to do is be near God. I want God to protect me. So I wanted to go to our church. Now, again, I'm scared. I'm young. I'm drunk. I'm bleeding. Okay. So I'm not thinking in, I'm not in my right mind. Okay. So I got down, I got down from my bedroom and I go to the car and I go to start the car and I realize I'm too drunk to drive. So I was like, I'll just walk the 2 miles. So you could either go the highway route or the back route. And I was really afraid that if I took the highway route, somebody would stop and see that I was impaired and I don't know. Even back then, I was scared of this kind of stuff. Um, so I decided to just go to the back route of, the back way. And I was just running and running and running and running. And I got to the church. Now, this all happened around the stuff with Michael happened around 3. The cutting probably happened around 5 or 6. So when I got to the church, it was about 7 o'clock, I think, like 6:37. And I'm banging on the parish door, and they were still there, and they told me to come in, and the priest said, how can I help you? And I just show him my arms. The poor thing, he didn't know what to do. Now, nowadays, and I'm laughing because, like, it's so far in my past, and I'm reflecting on it as an adult, thinking, this poor priest, he probably didn't know what to do. Now, nowadays, I would assume um, they would have called the police, but he didn't, which is fine. I mean, there was no protocol back then on what you do when, a bleeding kid comes to your, door drunk and messed up. So he called, which again, stuff is like vague. So from what I remember, um, he called the principal of my school. Now, the principal must have gone to the same church. I don't really know. And he put him on the phone, and the principal started to talk to me, and he said something like, "Now, I want you to promise you're going to go home and not do anything further." Something along those lines, like you're going to go home, everything's going to be okay, and you won't do anything further, promise me. And I said, "Yes," as I'm crying. I'm like, "Yes." And the priest promised me, the priest asked me and I promised him, and I just left. And I ran back home, and I just probably passed out and went to sleep. Luckily, 2 days later, I got my period, and that began um the next 15 years of celibacy, because that's how terrified I was. That's how terrified I was. So it was from 16, and then I think the next time was what when I was 30, something like that. Whatever the distance is between then. And that is a whole nother episode that's going to take place of all of that. It's not about intimacy so much. It's about that scarred me so much that I never wanted to look at anything that had to do with that again. Now, I've had boyfriends. Obviously, there was limited activity, which we're going to get into all of that, of how I had really long relationships um, with really good guys. I told them bits and pieces about it. They didn't know why I was choosing what I was choosing. I think they thought I was just afraid to get pregnant, and that was it. Um, like I said, I've not told many people this, um, but again, it set up the rest of the choices I made throughout my life. And that's what this podcast is about, reflecting on how I got to wherever I was, where I am. Um, what happened to make me choose these decisions? So we first had Eric and that whole crazy situation, and then we had Michael and that crazy stuff. So there is more to the story. I'm gonna continue it in another segment.